You will die. Everyone you've ever loved will die. And somehow, right now, you're just sitting there watching a video. Like that's fine. That's because humans have always had a way of dealing with death. Rituals, funerals, graves, ceremonies, a whole system for making the unbearable slightly more bearable. But here's what nobody asks. Where did that come from? Because at some point, there was a first funeral, a first grave, a first human being who looked at a dead body and thought, we should do something about this. 300,000 years ago, before cities, before farming, before language as we know it. A small group of humans is camped somewhere in Africa. One of them dies. For a long time, scientists assumed the answer was nothing. You die, you get left behind. The group moves on, animals eat the body. That's it. No ceremony, no burial, no grief. Just biology ending and the world continuing without you. In 2013, deep inside a cave system in South Africa called Rising Star, a team of cavers found a narrow passage barely wide enough for a human body. They squeezed through and found a chamber. Inside were bones, hundreds of them, all from the same species, Homo Naledi, a human relative with a brain about a third the size of yours. That the only explanation that makes sense is that someone carried them there on purpose. Something with a brain smaller than a chimpanzee was deliberately placing its dead somewhere specific. But the oldest confirmed intentional burial we've found belongs to our own species. In a cave in Israel called Qafzeh, archaeologists found the remains of a child, roughly 10 years old, buried about 100,000 years ago. The body was positioned carefully, hands placed near the face, and beside the child a set of deer antlers, placed deliberately across the arms. Nobody puts deer antlers on a body by accident. Someone grieved this child. Someone thought about what to leave with them. Someone made a choice. Because once you're making choices about your dead, you're thinking about what death means. You're asking questions. Is there something after? Does the body need to be somewhere safe? Does the person who died need anything where they're going? Around 70,000 years ago in a cave in South Africa called Blombos, researchers found ochre, a red mineral pigment ancient humans were painting. And we know they used that same ochre to paint their dead. The body would be covered in red pigment before burial. Why red? Nobody knows for certain. Some researchers think red represented blood, life, energy, a way of giving the dead something to carry into whatever came next. Others think it was simply a mark of respect. At a site in Russia called Sungir, researchers found two children buried together, head to head. Over 10,000 mammoth ivory beads sewn into their clothing, fox teeth arranged as a belt, carved ivory pendants, spears made from straightened mammoth tusks, each one taking hundreds of hours to make. These were not ordinary children getting an ordinary burial. Someone has spent enormous time and resources making sure these two kids went into the ground with everything they could possibly need. That's grief. That's love. In ivory beads and carved bone, 30,000 years before anyone invented a greeting card. But burial wasn't the only option. Around the same time, some groups were doing something completely different, sky burials. The body would be left on an elevated platform or on high ground, exposed to the elements and to birds. The idea in many cultures was that the birds carried the soul upward, that the body returning to nature was the point. Some groups practiced secondary burial. You'd bury the body first, then dig up the bones later once the flesh was gone, clean them, paint them, and rebury them somewhere more permanent or more significant. 2 funerals for one person, because once wasn't enough. And then there was cannibalism. And before you click away, hear this out, because this isn't the horror story version. Around 15,000 years ago in a cave in Somerset, England, called Gough's Cave, researchers found human bones with very specific cut marks on them, and human skulls that had been carefully shaped into cups. Now here's what matters. This wasn't a starvation cannibalism. There was plenty of other food. The most likely explanation is ritual. eating the dead as a way of keeping them with you. So by the time we get to around 10,000 years ago, humans had already invented burial, grave goods, body paint, sky burials, secondary burials, and ritual cannibalism. When a wolf pack loses a member, they move on. When an elephant herd loses one of their own, they return to the bones for years. They touch them with their trunks. They stand there. That's close. But even elephants don't bury their dead or leave gifts with them or paint their bodies red. Only humans looked at death and decided it required a response. Only humans built rituals around the unbearable. Only humans said, "You mattered," and here's the proof. A grave, a bead, a painted body, a skull turned into something as sacred. Every funeral you've ever attended, every gravestone you've ever read, every moment of silence you've ever stood through is the same impulse that made someone crawl through a dark cave 300,000 years ago to leave a body somewhere safe. We've always done this. We've always had to, because that's what it means to know that death is coming and love someone anyway.